I know that my father would have had a smile for every one of you. When I remember him, and I'd like to just talk about what he meant to each of us. I remember him as this smiling man. A man who had lessons for all of us. And when I look out at all of you, I see the faces of people who meant so much to him. His sister, Peggy, so good to see you here too. And family who have come from far. I got to speak to his brother, Jack, who's in Durban, who I ask that you'll keep in your thoughts and prayers as well. He's not doing so good. And as I got to speak to family from far, Sweden, all over, it just struck me how his life has touched so many people. And so I wanted to tell you about how his life touched me. I remember, if you know my dad, you'd know he'd sit out on the stoep, and in autumn, die wind waai en die blare val. And the leaves would fall down, and the first thing he would do is he would get right up after 2 leaves fell. He'd go and rake up those 2 leaves. He would always go, and he'd sit there, and then the next 2 leaves would fall, and he'd complain a little, I blare val up here. He'd be back out there and he'd clean up the leaves. So lesson number 1 was, take action immediately. That's what my father told me. The other thing I remember is, he went through many hard times with the time when the doctors had said that his leg would have to be amputated. And I remember he called up Irene and him were on the phone, and he had tears in his voice, and he was afraid. He didn't want to lose his legs and possibly his life. And at that time, as a family, we all worked together. We had Irene's son Eric was looking online for possibilities. We had calls being made from the family, and then we followed up on the American side. We found a study for him to get into, and he went to the Cleveland Clinic. He came over, and I remember this is a new story to all of you, because when I was making arrangements that he get into the Cleveland Clinic, they said, well, we really aren't sure if he will be right for this study to have his legs fixed. They were going to inject stem cells into his blood vessels to make them grow again. They said, we really don't know if he will be right for this or not. And of course, he was on the phone, and Irene was on the phone saying, did they say we can come? And so I said, yes, come. They said, yes, come. And so he came, and of course that was a big risk. I didn't know what would happen if they'd maybe turn him down. But we went there all together. We drove there to the Cleveland Clinic. They looked at him, they took a look. He came over with his scarpfell boot that he had on. Nobody'd seen that in America, of course. And they took a look over him, and they sort of weren't sure if he was going to be in their program or not. And so we said, well, why don't you just take an angiogram? Just take a look. You'll see. And sure enough, they did take an angiogram. And they said, yes, you definitely have this condition. We need to do something about it. And from that point on, his legs were fine, Thank heaven for that. But through all of that, he had that, and then, a few years ago, he had a stroke. He always had a good spirit. He would always try so hard to get back up again. He never gave up. Once when he had the stroke, one side of him was slightly paralyzed, but he got a little cushion ball, and every day he would get up and he would squeeze that ball. Because he said to me once, Cowans never give up, And that's something I've told to my son too. And Finally, the last little story I have to share with you was years and years ago, we went camping. We were driving around a mountain pass with lots of curves and corners. And one of the signs in the road said, tight corners, 30 kilometers per hour. And he looked at me and he said, it says 13 kilometers per hour. That means we can go 50. So, the other rule I guess I get from him is break the rules sometime. I think he'd be really happy to share with all of you those 3 things. Never give up. Break the rules sometimes. And take care of things immediately. Those are the thoughts that I will carry forward with him. I appreciate so much that all of you were here to share in this moment with him. And I'm sure he's here now looking down, smiling on all of you too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.